Hi there, Vanguard fans, and this is a Vanguard intro series to the different clans and how they operate. When you look at the different clans of Vanguard, it may at first seem like a very tedious and amazing group of clans. But it gets even more complicated because of the number of different ways these clans interact. Remember, this is a game of 1 versus 1. Both sides can pick a different clan or the same clan, and how these interact with one another is a huge pain in the ass and probably what you're going to spend most of your time thinking about as you build the kind of deck you want to play in tournaments and the such. In this series of videos, I'm hoping to address that issue, trying to look at how one particular clan works around itself and how you would deal with that clan if it was on the opposite side of the table. Let's get down to it, and in this video I am looking at Royal Paladin. Now, Royal Paladin is one of those clans that I honestly, for the love of God, am having such a difficult time thinking about because of how vanilla it is. If for those who aren't into card games a lot, they are the quintessential blank slate. You were looking at a clan that basically defined Vanguard as it is. It is a clan that has a little bit of everything because it was the first inventor of these ideas. It is the starting point of the series and the show that generated this game in the first place, or at the same time, for in whatever order it came. Is one of the first clans and one of the oldest clans in the game, just because it's what the game started out with, and because of that, they have a gigantic library of cards. All of them have their own little quirks. Some of them are seekers, some of them are blasters. We won't get into too much of that. What you do have to know is Royal Paladin is all about the power of friendship. I know it sounds corny, but please bear with me. Royal Paladin's strength is having the units on the field and finding those units so that you always have a full field. It is very easy for the Paladins in general to have a full field. Royal Paladin in particular spends more resources making sure that it is the perfect field and you have your perfect friend set up. And because of the power of friendship, when they all come together, their power increases, fun stuff happens, and amazing things like extra crits happen all the time. This is a clan that, on paper, with all of that said, is very, very simple. You play your cards, you call stuff straight out of the deck, things happen, and you win the game. Now, when you're up against them, they're also very simple. Their rear guards are their friends, so if you get rid of their friends, they're all lonely, they cry, and then they fall off onto a cliff or something. But what's important to note about the Royal Paladin is, even though I can say that they're very, very vanilla, they are still a decent choice all around. Because they are paladins, and the fact that you can have a full field and find things straight out of the deck, one of the strongest skills you can have in a card game, they are going to be around no matter what happens. I will say that some clans are underrepresentative, but this is one of those clans where if you were asking somebody to play for the first time, they could very easily get into the game just because of how simple the mechanics work. Mind you, it wouldn't be the first clan I show somebody because it kind of simplifies the game too much, but it is a good choice. Now, going down, as I do with all of these videos, I'm going to start with the G4. The G4 is, in particular, they were also one of the starters in this, and in that sense, they kind of expand on their ideas. Now, Royal Paladin, the first card that I'm looking at for you on the Grade 4, your G deck, is the Shrouded Divine Knight Blade. For anybody who's ever played or fought against clan, this is probably one of the only things you've seen before you suddenly don't have any say in the matter because you just fall apart. Gablade is one of the first strides that came out. Shrouded Divine Knight Gablade's skill is when you hit the Vanguard, search your deck for up to grade 2, or up to one grade 2 or greater unit, call it to our shuffle your deck. Because it happens in the main phase, that extra unit can attack. Don't get a power boost, that's fine. You increase the number of things on the field, that's great for this clan, and in particular, it is very strong because it does grade 2 and grade 3. Might be a small subtext, but very important because it makes it very, very versatile. Remember that in a normal deck, you don't actually have that many grade 2s. Having grade 2s and grade 3s expands it to like half of the possible units, which is good. Other than that, it just teaches you that Royal Paladin doesn't screw around. You let it hit, something gets called. Something happens, I call something. It just calls straight out of the deck, and it becomes a very consistent clan because of that fact. Moving to the next card. The next card is one of those finishers that will probably stay around just because of how strong the effect is. Holy Dragon, Saint Blood Dragon. It's really funny to me that Bushiroad really loves this dragon. In this case, you have an axe skill. Choose a face-down card named Holy Dragon, Saint Blow Dragon from your G-Zone, turn face up. This card gets 3,000 power for every rear guard until end of turn. If the number of face-up cards in the G-Zone is 2 or more, and the number of rear guards you have is 2 or more, this unit gets +1 critical until end of turn. This skill cannot be used again for the rest of the turn. Basically means huge power boost, lots of friends, and later enough in the game, I also get a crit. Very simple, very strong, decent choice all around. Not going to complain about this card. It's a good card. If you don't know what you're doing, you might as well put it in because it's going to... just because you had Gobblade around means that Saint Blow's going to be your best friend. Other than that, there's not much to talk about. This clan is very simple. They're G4. There are some complications here and there, but that's all you really have to understand. They're very, very simple. Moving on to the G3. First card I want to talk about is probably somebody that you may not have heard of if you've just been playing this game for the past year. This card cannot be boosted upon. During your turn, gets 2,000 power for each Royal Paladin rear guard, and at any point in the game, axe skill, even if it's on the rear guard, counterblast 3, search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 or less rear guard and call to R. Very expensive, probably never going to get used. This is the true KOK King of Knights Alfred. Now, he is one of the first cards that really made you think, this clan is really about the power of friendship. That's really what it's about. Even if you've got a useless card in hand that can't boost G2 or G3, you put it right behind him because he doesn't care, he doesn't boost, and you can't boost him anyway, so filling up your field is to his advantage and just makes for really big swings. That being said, back then it was big, now it's just decent, and it's one of those cards that really shows you how Royal Paladin thinks. The King of Knights loves to be around his friends. Put him around his friends, fun stuff happens. Royal Paladin has this thing about Arthurian legend, so you're just going to have to forgive them because they start sounding very, very corny after a while. The next card I'm going to look at is one of those from the sub-clans within Royal Paladin called the Jewel Knights. Leading Jewel Knight Salome. When this unit attacks, if the number of rear guards you have with Jewel Knight in its card name is 4 or more, which is essentially the entire field, this unit gets +2,000 and a crit. Having very little power boost, but having that crit is essential for what made Jewel Knight so strong back in the day. They had a very weak early game because of how they were structured, but Salome and some of the other Jewel Knights made up for that fact by pushing really hard as they got into the game. The second skill just calls another friend. What do? They just keep calling stuff. It's not that important. What's important is it's really easy to call things, and the requirement is if you've got a lot of called things, they get power. Just, it's quite simple. In the case of the Jewel Knights, they act a bit faster, I would say, and they have very good support, which we're going to get onto the next card, but they kind of lose out as the game goes by because you probably just ran out of Jewel Knights. Very important to consider. It's not so much a problem anymore, but something to think about anyway. The next card is probably one of those cards that almost, I would say, broke the game. When this unit is placed on R, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to grade 1 or less Jewel Knight, put it into your rear guard, shuffle your deck. Having access to all of your grade 1s using a G2, essentially filling up a lane or fixing a lane, made this a little bit too strong, I would say. But otherwise, a very decent choice and one of the strongest cards in the game because it just doesn't care. You've got empty fields and then suddenly you can find whatever piece you need and then it just fills the fields up. It was closely overpowered and watched by everyone because of how strong the effect was. Didn't require too much of the Vanguard and made amazing plays. Sword Me is definitely up there, at least on a pedestal, because of how strong the effect. Remember, as I've said, one of the strongest effects in card games is getting things straight out of the deck. You have complete control over whatever shows up and becomes so consistent that it could possibly be game-breaking. The next G2 and the last G2 that we're looking at is Starlight Violinist. Now, Starlight Violinist is one of those cards that you should watch out for because of the fact that after they hit the new generation of Stride units, the G2 lineup became very important in Royal Paladin. There was only 11 of them and the effects were astounding. This card particularly made it very astounding because when it shows up on Vanguard or Rearguard, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, call a G2. Not named Violinist, of course. And basically, you just called stuff and stuff happened, and you called more stuff and stuff happened. If you called stuff during the battle phase, you were Spike Brothers and you called more stuff and you can attack some more. This is a great activator, one of those key cards you have to be careful of, and I would say most Royal Paladins would run it at a 3 or a 2 of just because they've got access to their entire deck, but don't be surprised to see more of that just because it works from hand and from deck. The G1 lineup, going down the list, I had a difficult time with the G1 lineup. There isn't actually a lot of very interesting cards, and I had to go with something that had a very advanced skill, which is the Brave skill, very recent, GB1. If you've got 3 or less cards in hand, Soul Blast 1 at the beginning of your guard step. If your Vanguard is in that attack, you may call this from rear guard to the guard circle and it becomes a 10k guard. Not bad, not great. It kind of shows you that the power of friendship works on their pets too. Whatever. It's still, I would say, one of those cards that if you see it on the field, you have to be very careful and watch out for hand sizes. But to be real, if you're already in Brave status during your opponent's turn, you've got other problems to deal with. It's not that much of a problem, I would say. Second to last card I want to talk about is Xenon. Now, Xenon is one of those cards that I really had to think very hard about if I loved, because it just made some very strange plays and kind of fueled my plays to really strange ways of playing this game. But when this card is placed on R, if you have a Royal Paladin Vanguard, reveal the top card of your deck. If the revealed card is the same grade as your Vanguard, ride it. If not, put this in the drop zone. Now, in particular, what's really funny is if this happens during the battle phase and your Vanguard is already attacked, and you suddenly call Xenon onto the field, you could potentially restand the Vanguard. Not always going to happen. It's kind of out there, really. It's really, really out there, but, kind of fun to think about just because of how strange it is. It is one of those cards that are probably never going to be made again just because of how awkward the skill is, and I love him for that, and this art is fabulous. Excuse me. So, the last card we're talking about is Wingle Brave. I didn't get into this, but, just to reiterate, even their starters are overpowered. When the attack hits during a battle that this unit boosted the Blaster, which is a majority of one of the subclans, you may pay the cost. If you do, put it into the soul, search your deck for one blaster card, any blaster card, put it into your hand. Now, just having access to any card into the deck and putting it on the field is a very strong skill because it optimizes the field. Being able to put that card into your hand for later use is called tutoring. And tutoring has to be watched very closely in card games because of how strong the effect is and how much you have to manage things around to make sure that it doesn't become completely overpowered. Wingle Brave is balanced because you understand their game plan. If they've got blasters, they're probably running the rest of the blasters, and that's just how they work. In any case, that is Royal Paladin, not a complicated clan, really. They've got the strongest tutors in the game. They've got the strongest abilities to basically have their deck wide open to them and make fun stuff happen. And their effective consistency is so ridiculously high, you will almost always be guaranteed to play your tricks every single game. That is their greatest strength. That is how they win games, and probably how you're going to imagine them over time. They are just that strong. Now, watch out for them because just because they don't have the pieces necessary, they can probably fish it out of their deck. If you let Wingle Brave hit, make sure you're ready because the blasters tend to have crits and high power, or for that matter, most of the clan really does have high power and crits. It's really just their thing. They, outside of Starlight Violinist, they don't really do the whole extra attacks thing, so 3 attacks is probably all you're going to see out of them, but they're going to be very big attacks. In particular, their G series is something to watch out for because the G series uses up the resource of their deck quite quickly. Remember that there's only about 11, 12 G2s in a typical deck. Because of that fact, a lot of the great effects that the G series does to fish out G2s can run out. The Blaster series, all of them are G2s and G3s, most of them anyway, and this also runs out the resource. Their G2 are particularly tight because of that fact, and killing them off does put them in a disadvantage. I didn't talk about the other ways that they can play around this, but what's important to note is their G2 and G3 lineup are probably their most important, and their G1 is on the sideline just because it's less effective to have access to the entire deck and not pull out a frontline attacker. Anyway, that's Royal Paladin. If you've got any questions about them, I'm totally happy to answer them. If you're playing them, understand that I can't help you. If you're having trouble with this clan, then I'm not sure. You're probably going to need a lot of review to get through the rest of the clans, because this is the simplest it's going to get. And it's one of those clans that's hard to mess up, but effective and perfect for a beginner. I would definitely say it's not a newbie deck, because it can definitely outpace some decks just because of how consistent it is. Just be aware that you're not going to do anything exciting. You're going to do something solid, and it's going to work. Anyway, this has been extremewirehead and my Vanguard intro review to Royal Paladin. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Peace.